Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Matt, and today I really wanted to talk about this kind of concept of should you learn these languages that are perceived as very, very important, or should you learn the languages that you want to learn? So, when I think about this question, right, inevitably a couple of languages always come up, right? Maybe if you're, in the United States, Spanish comes up quite a bit. For other people, maybe it's like Chinese because of the growing influence of China, or maybe it's whatever regional language that might be important, English, for example. And I think that really, what's really important to do is learn the language that you want to learn. At least if your goal is fluency. And the reason why is that the language learning process really does take a long time. And if you really want to get fluent or really learn a language on a very competent level, you got to realize that, like I said, it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and it's going to be a struggle, right? There's going to be periods of time where you're very frustrated, you don't understand things, and if you don't like the language that you're learning and you're learning it for this external reason, it's going to be very, very, very hard the entire time you're learning, and really you're going to be at a very big disadvantage going through the process. Now, does that mean that those people can't become fluent or achieve results? Of course not. It just means that you're going to really be running into a lot of difficulties, and I think for a lot of people, they might not be able to make the journey to the very end because they have just been told that this language is important and they have no interest in learning it. I think a good example of this is school, right? There's a lot of kids out there where they're forced to learn a language and they don't really care about the language, but they need to do well to get an A, right? And by the end of it, they don't really know much. So really, I think choosing the languages that you want to learn is very important, right? Because the process is long, the process is hard. And if you're not having fun, it's going to be really, really tough, right? I think for a lot of people, they don't incorporate fun activities in the language learning process, so inevitably they get bored or overwhelmed. And it really is just going to hurt you if you're not really engaged with the languages you want to learn. So if you're asking yourself that question, you might feel like the language that you're learning is not very practical, or is useful compared to others. I think that's okay, right? Do the things that you want to do, because that funness, that excitement is going to help you to make a lot more progress in the person that learning that language because it's perceived as more useful. And I think that's very important. Now, that being said, I think if you really were really very bent on definitely learning some of these languages that are perceived as more useful or what have you, I think that there's ways to probably try to find ways to make it more interesting, right? Like what is compelling about that language? Maybe you can find things in their culture or something along those lines where, by just simply exploring the language, you can make it something that you want to go do and it's more fun. I think that's a way, but in some cases, you're really going to do that and you still just have no interest in learning Chinese or whatever it is. And I think that's totally fine, right? It just takes a long time for some of these languages, especially some of the more complicated ones that are very different than from English or whatever your native language is. And to be honest with you, it's a grind. It can be a grind. A lot of people are not going to tell you that, but it's the truth. So if you're going to be investing that time in language learning, do the things that you want to do. Learn the languages that you want. Don't worry about the haters for you learning whatever language it is, because I think for a lot of people they don't realize the level of work and intensity that goes into it. And the funny thing is that if you just keep going down your path, you might actually find the interest to go learn some of those languages that are more useful. You might change along the way, and I think that ultimately is going to be very helpful for you in the long run. And the thing about it too is that as you learn a language, you actually learn how to be a better language learner, right? You find out what works, you find out what doesn't work, the best methods out there, and by the time you want to learn another language or maybe that more useful language, you have so much more experience and resources now to be even more quick in learning that language. So when it comes down to, the question of whether or not you should learn the useful languages or the ones that you want, do the ones that you want. Just because, learning the languages that are perceived as more useful but you have no interest in, it's going to be a grind. And it might be better just to not try to attempt something where you kind of get halfway there and you don't really accomplish much, versus getting all the way to fluency in the thing that you wanted to do in the first place. So what do you think? Leave a comment below, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.